I want to turn in closing to a couple broader questions about the state of the GOP. And I think you alluded to one of the people I was going to mention in this broader question. We just had Tucker Carlson, who is apparently a vice presidential potential for Donald Trump in 2024 over in Russia, making videos comparing Russia favorably to the United States. We speak today, and you put out a statement on the news of Alexei Navalny's death. And there was a statement by Lee Zeldin, a former colleague of you. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, where he said, as the world reflects on the murder of Alexei Navalny at the hands of Putin, it's worth remembering that Democrats are actively doing Biden's bidding as they also try to imprison his chief political opponent, Donald Trump, and remove him from the ballot and ensure he dies in prison. So, we either have many big figures in the GOP either outright saying Russia is better than the United States or comparing the political environment in Russia to the United States. How did we get to this place? And is there a way out of this place that the Republican Party currently finds itself in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading Lee Zeldin's tweet. I mean, I think it's it's a weird tweet, but I'm not sure there's much more meaning than that. I think it's just looking for clickbait. Tucker's comments and his videos are obviously way weirder. He's always had an affinity for Russia. I wouldn't call him a Republican by any stretch. He would deride Reagan. He's on economic policies. He's often apt to agree more with Elizabeth Warren than Republicans. I mean,
he is a potential vice presidential pick in 2024. I mean, okay,
I'm just saying I'm just telling you what I think of him. I mean, that doesn't affect my opinion. So obviously I have a personal distaste. I have a personal distaste for Tucker Carlson.
Right. And I'm not saying that it should affect your opinion, but I'm just saying he's not so far outside of today's Republican Party because he is not some fringe figure I'm picking out of nowhere. He is apparently being considered as a vice presidential candidate on the Republican ticket. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to change your opinion. I'm just saying he does seem to be a mainstream figure here.
I don't know how serious that is. Trump is actually one of the more skilled politicians I've ever witnessed, and he's really good at making people believe things just to keep them closer. So it would be a terrible pick, and I think Trump knows that. Anybody around him knows that. Just for the sake of winning, I would rather see Trump win than Biden win. So I would recommend not picking Tucker Carlson. I think it would be a very bad idea. You're not going to grow your base by doing that. So just politically, I don't think it's realistic. He's fired from Fox News. He makes his Twitter videos now or whatever. And, he makes news by going to Russia. And it's a pretty big deal to go to Russia and interview Vladimir Putin. He's put a lot of work into that over the years. By basically repeating whatever propaganda Putin puts out constantly to make him like him, so that he can get an interview. Hey, good for you. I do think it was really strange to be in Russian subways and supermarkets and be like, this is just amazing. Are you stupid? Or you can't be that stupid, right? Because you can go to North Korea and find some really beautiful places that they only take tourists and foreigners to. The subway, by the way, I read an interesting article on this, and it was kind of hilarious. It's the subway that he was so excited about. And Moscow has always been famous for its beautiful subway. But, the irony of that is, it was built in the Soviet era. Because look, if communism, if they decide to all put all of their effort into one thing, they can figure it out. But even they actually couldn't figure it out. They had to bring in British engineers to build it. So they had to bring in engineers from a capitalist society to actually build that thing. And I think they imprisoned them for a while. It's the whole story behind it. So it's just such blatant ignorance. And, I never know if those are lies or if it's just he doesn't know. I don't know. I don't care. I obviously hate the guy just because he's personally insulted me for disagreeing on policy issues. And so I have no respect for somebody like that.
But I guess on the broader point, I mean, do you disagree that this view of Russia seems, if not a majority view right now in the zeitgeist of the Republican Party, it has many more adherents than it had, a decade ago. And is that a concern? I mean, what does that say about the state of the GOP and your efforts to reform it? I mean, you obviously want to get things done in Congress. You just laid out your border bill that you would like. You say you're not entirely optimistic that something like that will pass. You have views of foreign policy that do seem out of touch necessarily with maybe where the current Republican Party is. Is it worth it sometimes,
really.
Do you think?
No. Of course it's worth it. It's my Republican Party. It's not theirs. Because what we're talking about is a group of populists that have nothing to do with any kind of conservatism or Republican Party, not tethered in principles. And so there's a lot less of them than I think you might think. You're in media, and I'm in politics. But we both just see the loudest people all the time. But what you don't do and what I do is talk to normal people, because I have to do events and I have to go talk to, that's what I have to do, right? On the campaign trail, or just part of my normal job is just talking to regular people who don't necessarily show up at like GOP conventions. And so, no, I'm not out of touch in a huge way. And there's a difference between being against Ukraine, and there is a weird, like, anti-Ukrainian, like, bent that does fit a larger majority. That doesn't mean it's pro-Russia. To be honest, if you really want to explain it's oftentimes it's in politics. We're looking for deeper reasons and like deeper movements within the party, like these well thought out ideologies that are captivating the public. No, look, Democrats wore the Ukraine flag on their lapel pin and like wove it around a lot, and so Republicans hated it. Okay. I mean, I'm not so sure that it's a lot more complicated than that. I can't, how many times can we count that during Trump's presidency, he was so skilled at making the Democrats believe something they didn't believe 5 minutes ago, just because now he believed it. It was astonishing. And everybody's guilty of that to some extent, I think. Because he was very supportive of Ukraine when he was president. And to his credit, he hasn't really wavered a whole lot on that. He says things like, well, we should have a loan and something like that. And he's always giving space there.
When you say he was supportive of it, a lot of that support, at least from reports, were people within the administration. And sometimes he'd get angry when he would learn that the administration did something. Do you believe he is personally supportive of Ukraine and not supportive of Russia?
I mean, I don't know I can't read his mind, but I can look at his actions, and his actions were definitively more supportive than the Obama administration was, just by aid given to Ukraine as far as weapons versus blankets. Kind of, remember that whole argument. The reporting that he's never denied that he said, like, if you ever invade Ukraine, we'll bomb the shit out of Moscow. I mean, that's deterrence. Sometimes a little bit of crazy talk is deterrence. When we say peace through strength, you've got to do the strength part. And sometimes strength is just talking tough. And Trump had his own version of that, of course. But it seems to have worked. So you make somebody's a little unpredictable. He had shown willingness to massively increase our troop presence and warfighting capabilities against ISIS. So he wasn't as dove. What's weird about the current, America First movement is like they're just against all foreign policy. Like if they had their way, there would be no troops abroad. It's a very strange idea of what national security is, but that was never Trump's doctrine at all. So, I liked his doctrine for the most part. Can
I press you on that? I mean, rhetorically, it was in part his doctrine: remove NATO troops, remove bases from around the world. That's certainly, I don't think, Dan Crenshaw's position.
Right, but he didn't do it. I mean, again, like we can try and read his mind and look at rhetoric, but actions simply speak louder. And so
let's close on this question, Congressman. It sounded like you answered my final question earlier, that in a choice between Biden and Trump, you would support Trump. And just from this back and forth, I guess your view is you're not concerned that, like some people that were in his administration, the John Boltons, that he will do some of the things that he says he will do. For instance, Bolton's afraid that he'll actually withdraw from NATO. That was his inclination. He wanted to do that. In some other of the foreign policy positions that you're advocating against, what kind of this neo-isolationism, why are you so confident that that is not how he will govern in his second 4 years, when he might have fewer of the people around him preventing him from doing maybe what a lot of people think is his instinctual desire?
I can't be super optimistic. I'm just more optimistic about him than Biden. There's a lot more to running the administration also than just their foreign policy. And again, like, I'm just looking at his actions. He didn't do it before. I'm not sure why he would about face so much. He hasn't even, again, like, if you just look at Ukraine as a specific example, despite the massive swings in public opinion on the Republican Party that they've indicated, he hasn't done that as like nearly as much. He hasn't followed that nearly as much. And even recently, effectively said, yeah, we should give them Ukraine aid, but it should be a loan, you know? So, okay, a loan with no interest rates and no time limits. Which is actually a great idea and something that we're looking at writing. So it's, I'm not, I don't look, the doomsdayers about Trump. I don't think they were right in the beginning. You know, I was very upset about what happened on January 6th.
I know, but doesn't that make them right? But doesn't trying to stay in power kind of make them right? I mean, even some of the doomsayers didn't predict that. And the fact that he tried to maintain power, doesn't that kind of justify their doomsaying? Kind of. I mean, didn't try. I'm not sure how hard he tried. He tried with a lot of words and mean things. And then, you know, in the end, we could go into this forever, I guess. But in the end, it was a peaceful transfer of power. And that was it, you know. And it was, I mean, like, I was there and I was pissed about it. I was, you know, pissed about how that mob got whipped up. But in the end, you know, I don't call it an insurrection. It's just, by definition, that's not what it is. It was an angry mob that got really out of control. And like, they were lied to. They were lied to in the sense that they were told that they could affect change. And when people think that they can affect change, well, they'll get really passionate about it. They'll go, and they thought that day was the day to affect change, because they thought that process we were engaging in Congress could actually change the presidential election, which of course it can't. Constitutionally, it can't. It's a bogus procedure to begin with. I hate it. I think it should be abolished. It's deeply against the Constitution. Democrats did it. They've been doing it for years and multiple elections. Then the Republicans really did it. So it's just that whole situation, I think, deserves a lot more explanation than just he tried to stay in power. I mean, look, he had multiple court challenges. He used procedures to stay in power. That's a very different thing than like trying to raise an army to stay in power. It's a very different thing. And fair, not at the end. I mean, I don't think January 6th with procedures. I mean, he filed court cases that he lost. And then when those failed, I mean, he failed, but he attempted to, I mean, it wasn't procedural, I don't think. In the end, I think you'll agree on that, Congressman.
Well, no, I don't, because it's, what did he do? He tweeted at Mike Pence. Like, you know, did it instigate, like, did it kind of make all these people crazy and make them do crazy shit? Yeah. But in the end, he tweeted at Mike Pence. Now, I think that's wrong.
And he stayed inside, but didn't call for help. It didn't initiate help.
No, but
Mike Pence
you
did all sorts of
criticize the morality of it all day long, but you can't call it this sort of South American style coup either. It's just, you know, and I think that conversation goes off the rails way too often. You know, somebody's like, I try to be objective about criticisms on the right and the left. And, you know, I think that's why I've never used the word insurrection, because it just doesn't fit. And I would say, you know, if he was trying to stay in power, I don't think he tried that hard. Tried harder than most, but in the end, he tried through procedures, through his bully pulpit, through his ability to speak. But it ended there.
Well, Congressman, I think I would just add that I think perhaps it didn't work because maybe there was enough institutions and people around him that wouldn't follow through on what he hoped. But I didn't mean to get into a January 6th
but let's
conversation.
imagine though. Let's imagine Mike Pence does do what he wants. I mean, I always kind of laugh at that because I got asked. Like, Stefanik said she would have done something different. I'm like, you literally can't. And that was Mike Pence's whole argument. Like, there is no procedure for you to follow. It doesn't exist. It's not constitutional. It would be laughed out of the room right away. And so you are right about that one thing. I mean, our institutions are strong. Our Constitution is very strong. That's why we have the oldest one, even though we're one of the youngest countries. So I think there's a bit more optimism. I'm just, no matter who's in power, I'm never really a doomsayer. And, because, sometimes you just got to take a step back, and still recognize like still the greatest place in the world, despite a bunch of idiots trying to screw it up for the last 250 years. And so, yeah, there's some remarkably stable aspects of the United States.